This webinar was recorded in 2022. However, the content and information is relevant to Advocacy Day 2023. Any references to the date of Advocacy Day are for the 2022 date. Advocacy Day in 2023 is Tuesday, April 25th.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Resolve and ASRM Advocacy Day training. This training is for new advocates. If you have never participated in our Federal Advocacy Day, either in person or virtually, this is a perfect webinar for you, as we will cover all the basics and bring you up to speed on what you need to know. I'm Barb Calora. I'm the president and CEO of Resolve, the National Infertility Association. And joining me today is Jessie Loesch. Jessie is with the American Society for Reproductive Medicine. She's a public policy specialist. Welcome, Jessie. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Barb. Thanks for having me. I'm very excited.
Well, so I understand you might know a thing or two about advocating. Tell us a little bit about your background.
I worked for the New York legislator, so I had the pleasure, which it was, of speaking with advocates, both new and seasoned, and I've also advocated myself, so I can tell people where the best places to get the best coffee. That's really the secret to Advocacy Day.
Yes. So what you're saying is you were a staffer and you had advocates and lobbyists probably meeting with you, right?
Yes. So really, I would say the pleasure of working for the government is meeting with advocates, because you get to hear their stories. And we're going to talk about stories in a little bit, but advocates are the heart and soul of the government.
Yeah, well, I'm so honored to be here today with you, and I know you're going to have some great advice for our advocates. So let's jump right in and look at what we're going to be covering today on this webinar. We're going to talk a little bit about what is Advocacy Day. We're going to give you kind of a Congress 101 lesson, a little bit about the legislative process. We're going to help you with that, what we call our elevator pitch, and then just some reminders and ways to make sure you are completely prepared for Advocacy Day this year. So, what is Advocacy Day? Advocacy Day is your opportunity to bring what our Constitution actually says, bring your grievances to our legislators. What we like to say is that the Capitol and the members of Congress and your U.S. senators, it's your house. They work for you, and you are the one who holds them accountable. So your ability to actually meet with and talk to your legislators is your is your constitutional right. And so we want to provide you with that opportunity to exercise that right. So let's just talk a little bit about the legislative process and the differences between state versus federal legislation. So Advocacy Day, on May 18th, Advocacy Day is about federal legislation. So this is legislation that is reviewed and voted on by the US Senate and the US House of Representatives here in Washington, D.C. And it is legislation and an impact that covers the whole United States. Whereas when you go to your state capital, I live in Virginia, so our state capital is in Richmond. Our state capital passes laws that only impact people who live in Virginia. So some of you may have participated, many of you may have participated in state legislation, which is fantastic. But now you're going to be involved in federal legislation, which is going to impact the whole country. So who are your members of Congress? Jessie, can you take us through a little bit about how Congress works?
I can. I feel like I want to sing this. I have all kinds of musical experience running through my head. So your members of Congress, your MOC, if you see the acronym anywhere, and you probably will. Everybody has 2 state senators. Every state gets 2. So we have 100 total. sorry, Washington, D.C. Some of you are working on that. And your members of Congress have a 6-year term. You have one representative in the House, one per district. For those of you who do the math, I'm not one of you, but we have 435 total, and your members of Congress have a 2-year term. There's a lot of, so they actually run, everybody is on the same cycle at the same time. So to find your members of Congress, it's actually pretty easy. You can go to www.senate.gov or www.house.gov and you put in your zip code and your address and they appear. So fun fact down there, Barb, I love a fun fact. You're meeting on Advocacy Day, May 18th, with the 117th Congress of the United States, which is a pretty
Oh, and one of the things about the 117th Congress is that it ends this year in December, right, Jesse? So when we advocate this year, we want to make sure we are getting as far as we can with our legislation, because if nothing passes by December, what happens?
So the cycle starts again. Exactly. So this 117th Congress is really looking to make their mark the same way that we are, right? And that's a statement that you can make. You can really use that. You can say that, just like, members of Congress, they're people too, right? And they are really looking to pass legislation the same way that we are really looking to pass legislation, and they have till December. So the urgency is really there as well. Good point, Barb.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. All right.
So let's see what we got here. So congressional committees. Most members of Congress are part of congressional committees. Some are heads of committees and some are heads of subcommittees, and the rest of them sit on those committees. So there are hundreds of committees and subcommittees. There are committees on energy and transportation. There are 20 standing committees in the House and 16 standing committees in the Senate. And this is where our little bills begin their lives. They act, and these committees and subcommittees act as little legislatures. So they identify which bills deserve legislative review. So, for nerds in the room, every day we look and see which bills get introduced, and some of those bills go nowhere. Some fascinating bills for those of us who used to work in the legislature are, they're about like what hubcaps can do, but some of these bills are bills that we really want to urge our little legislators to push and to show that they really deserve this legislative review. And that's where you come in, because you can explain why they deserve that review.
One of the things that is really neat about Advocacy Day is you're going to have a lot of information at your fingertips about your 2 U.S. senators and your representative. You're going to be given a tool that tells you what committees they're on. It's also going to tell you if they've ever supported our issues in the past. And so it'll be kind of interesting to see when you are meeting with them. We're going to be talking about issues related to, let's say, the military or veterans. And one of your legislators may sit on one of those committees, for example, that deals with Veterans Affairs. And so it's interesting that sometimes, Jesse, when I'm in those meetings where the member is on that particular committee of relevance, the staffers are a little more interested sometimes, right? They pay attention a little bit more because they know that this is an issue that might come up on their boss's committee assignments.
And Barbara, I also want to say, and as somebody who listened to a lot of advocates, and I know my former boss would agree, even though members sit on these committees, they are not the experts. They live their own lives. Some of them are lawyers, some of them are, they have other jobs, but it doesn't mean that they necessarily are professionals in Veterans Affairs. Even though they sit on these committees, they rely on advocates. You are the expert in your field and what you do. So Barb, when you go in to speak about infertility awareness, you're coming in with a field of expertise that really the legislative official, the legislative director and staffer, they really need. Yeah. I used to go back to my boss and say, I spoke to an advocate who said that 1 in 8 people suffer from infertility. And she would say, tell me more about that.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
really,
yeah.
like, we rely on you to tell us these things that our bosses would go to the floor and then vote on. So when you go and speak to these staffers, just know that you are the expert in that field.
Absolutely. Fantastic advice. Fantastic.
I love this slide so much. Okay. So politics really is local. It really is. Yes, you're speaking about, federal legislation, but people, constituent is a magic word. You are a constituent, you are voting, and you are the boss. You step into that room and that staffer knows that you are in charge because they rely on you. They rely on your vote. So use your story and just imagine that you have a cape, right? Once you step in there, you are your superpower is that you are a constituent. Like, that's one and done. Love it.
Fantastic. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I'll tell you, the Resolve office and the ASRM Public Affairs office are both in the Washington, D.C. area. And, we can reach out and meet with staffers, quite honestly, we can do that all day long, but they want to hear from you. They want to hear from their constituents. They don't actually want to hear from me. So, please keep that in mind, and how important that is. So let me share a little bit about the legislative process, just so you have some background on how this works. So you have the U.S. Senate and you have the U.S. House of Representatives, and they operate separately for the most part, and bills get introduced, and we ideally you want a bill written and introduced in one of the chambers, maybe the Senate. And then you want like the exact same bill, same wording and everything introduced in the U.S. House of Representatives. That's the ideal situation, is where you have the bill looks and reads the same. It's introduced and it's given a number in the House of Representatives, and then it's given a bill number in the Senate, but it's identical. It travels a little bit differently, as Jesse just said, through those committee structures. But it works really well if you've got a bill in both the House and the Senate that reads the same. So the legislator who first introduces a bill, they're called a sponsor, and then the goal is to get other members of Congress or other U.S. senators supporting that piece of legislation, and they do that through something called co-sponsorship. They actually go into like a computer system, and their staff does it, and they put their name on the bill, and then their name starts showing up on the bill as a co-sponsor. And what's great about co-sponsorships is that it sort of gives the legislator a way to say, I care about this issue. This is important to me. And it's a numbers game. We'd love to see lots and lots and lots of legislators on as co-sponsors, but legislation has passed that doesn't have a ton of co-sponsors as well. So if you see the number HR, if you see the words HR before a number, that means that is a bill that's in the House of Representatives. And if you see an S in front of it, that's a bill that is for the U.S. Senate. So the good news is, you're not going to have to memorize or worry about this, because all of the bills that we support are going to be listed on a document with all the numbers. And guess what? Everybody on Capitol Hill, every staffer knows exactly how to go find that bill and figure out how to be co-sponsor and stuff. You don't need to tell them how to do that. But you do need to tell them the name of the bill and the bill number. And we do that. We do that on a document that you will have. And guess what? We're going to give that document to all these offices as well before your meetings. So, I just share that so that you have an idea. You wouldn't ask a senator to sponsor a bill that begins with HR, because that's a bill in the House of Representatives, and likewise vice versa. But we have made it really easy for you. But that gives you a little bit of background. When you look at those bills and the numbers, you're like, oh, I know what that is. That's a bill that was introduced in the House of Representatives. And then we're going to tell you if your U.S. senators or your representative are co-sponsors. So we've done all that homework for you as well. And so it's going to be so awesome because you'll go into some of your meetings and you'll say, oh, thank you so much. We know you are already a co-sponsor on some of our issues. But here's a secret fact, Jesse. There isn't, I can honestly say this, there is not any member of the US Senate or the House of Representatives who sponsor all of our bills. So everybody's job is very important. Nobody gets the day off on May 18th.
And I will tell you also that it is, I don't know about equally, because again, not a math girl, but it is really important to thank your members of Congress and your senators for sponsoring. It's very important to ask them to sponsor or co-sponsor, but it is really nice to thank them for sponsoring and co-sponsoring. So it's not like you could skip, I'm a member of Congress. Hey, Nydia Velázquez. Hey, shout out Nydia Velázquez is already sponsoring. We're going to skip her office. No. Make sure to stop in and thank the staffer.
I so love that. I mean, who doesn't like to be thanked for something? And I'll tell you, I don't think members of Congress and their staff are thanked a whole lot these days. So
they are not. It is also a reminder that it matters. And then sometimes they even say like, oh, somebody thanked me for the bill. Let me look up that bill and remember why I signed on. Maybe I'll like remind my friends on the floor to sign on to them too. So it really does matter to thank them.
Yeah, I love that. And I find that all the time. They're like, oh, thank you. Oh, and they're so proud to like, be a part of supporting our issues.
Yeah.
So we've already kind of gone over this, but again, co-sponsor is what happens after that bill gets introduced. And oftentimes it's advocates like us who are letting senators and representatives even know about a bill. Like there's so many bills, these staffers really can't keep up. So it's our job to say, hey, we have some bills that are important to us and I love you to co-sponsor. And so that's what you're going to be doing. It doesn't matter if the bill was introduced by a Republican or a Democrat, any member of the House and any member, any US Senator can co-sponsor a bill. So just know that that is open for everybody and it's your job to let them know about it and ask them to do that. Well, a big part of Advocacy Day is your story. Jesse, take us through this.
Okay, so first of all, if you are not a public speaker, if you don't consider yourself an advocate, that's okay. So get the nerves out of the way first. And I'm going to start at the very bottom because Barb, what I think Resolve, from the many things that you do well, what I think is the most important is that you provide a state captain. You provide support, right? So you are never going to be alone in this day, which means that if you do what I did on my very first baby advocacy day in Albany, and you start looking at your state senator and say, can you? Okay, bye, thank you, and leave the room because you think you're going to pass out. You've got backup. It's all right. So you are always going to have a state captain. And as a former staffer, they are very used to people coming in and out of the room.
Yes.
So do not worry. You don't have to have a polished script. In fact, it's better if you don't, because you want to come in as a human, right? Your story and your humanity is what you really want to share. Also your zip code, because again, going back to the superpower, right? Your constituency, the fact that you are a voter for this person is what's really impactful here. So when you go in, again, Resolve has shared this script for you that you don't have to go thing by thing, but you can. Barb, you're my member of Congress for the day. So hi, Barb.
Hi, Jesse.
I'm Jesse. I'm one of your constituents. I'm from Brooklyn. Miss Brooklyn, really miss bagels. And I'm an advocate from ASRM and Resolve, the National Infertility Association. Thank you so much. Thanking people is Thank you so much for taking the time to meet with us today. And then you get to share your story, right?
Wow.
I really want to meet with you today because infertility awareness is really personal to me. And then you could tell them why. And then you've got your ask, right? Because even if you share the most amazing story and then say, okay, well, thank you, bye. They don't really know what to do with that. But if you've got them on the hook and then say, right, we actually have this list of bills that we would love for your member to sign on to as a co-sponsor. Bam, right? Then they could take that directly to their boss.
Yeah.
And then they could say, we met with this amazing group of people. They were so fantastic. Here are some facts that they shared, and here are these bills that we would love for you to co-sponsor. Right?
You know, Jessie, what I love about this is that it's really about your story, you know, where you live. So we all know that. We all know our story. It's making sure that story that you have is pared down. Yeah. And is in a digestible way. And again, your state captain is going to help you with this, and we're going to have resources for you. The other cool thing is we have the kind of like almost like a script and the asks, everything in a document that you're going to have. And we also have another training video that goes through the issues and the asks. But Jessie, the way you just described it sounds kind of easy. So
it is easy. You know, it sounds, I think, overwhelming, but it is actually, it's being a person with another person, you know, and a lot of times these staffers are really young. And all they really want to do is hear why it matters. Because as you said, especially with this 117th Congress, they are hearing so many bills. A lot of them are very technical. Right? So they're hearing from people who want to, you know, fill in potholes. They don't know how to sell that to their bosses. Right. But if they hear from people, right, who are asking them something that is pretty human, that's an easy lift for them.
Wow.
And I also want to share that you don't have to share anything that feels too personal or difficult for you.
Oh, good point.
Right? That's and that's something that your state captain will help you with as well, is making your story into something that is easy for you to share as well.
That's great. Great.
Yeah.
Any other tips here for our new advocates?
So this is great. I think, you know, what you're doing is you are building a bridge to your elected official. And I love that, you know, Resolve really talks about creating and building families. You're speaking to somebody who's pro-family. Who is not pro-family, right? Like, we are pro-family. They're pro-family. That's a digestible word. You know, everybody wants the opportunity to build the family that they deserve. That's an easy ask, right? So if you have patient advocates in your meeting, that's an easy way to share a story, right? We want to give everybody the opportunity to build their family. Done.
Wow. Done.
So emphasize the importance of family. Thank you so much. And a lot of thanking, a lot of, you know, just smiling and thanking. This is my favorite thing. Okay. Sorry, I know I said the other one was my favorite thing, but I'm giving this one a thank you too. So people are, you know, again, young staffers, they are going to, even if they are very taken by the ask, then they're going to get overwhelmed by other things. May 18th is the beginning of a relationship, right? You are starting a relationship with your elected official, with your member of Congress or your Senate. That's not the end of the relationship, right? Again, they work for you. So this exercise, I love that you put it, is not a one and done. You have put a face on infertility in their community. You've educated the staff. I love that. Make sure that you keep that relationship going. Call them the next day, the next week, thank them, remind them that you were in their office, ask them, you know, thank you. Remember when we talked about these bills? I just want to follow up. Following up is always a great thing. Take their cards are always, you know, both your members of Congress cards and your staffers cards. I love when people email me.
They're going to be virtual, but you can ask them, right? You can ask them,
Definitely ask them for their information.
say, hey,
They should offer. If not, ask them. Hi,
how
can
do
I get
follow up
can
with
I get
you?
your email address?
There you go.
Barb, who works for my member of Congress, I would love to follow up with you next week.
Oh yeah, here's my email.
Great.
I have them like spell it out or whatever, because it can be a little funky. Of course, ask for their email. That's awesome. They'll
Barb,
definitely get
and
it.
I'm going to follow up with you. I'll make sure to send you, the list of bills to make sure that your member signs on. Thank you. And then next week, I'm going to send you a thank you and ask if you have any questions, because that's my passive aggressive way of finding out that your member signed on, right? Because you know what? There's a lot of information.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and this is great. Don't be overly partisan, because this isn't a partisan issue. Family building is nonpartisan, right? We're not making this partisan. We're building families. And again, right. Thank you for their time. Ask them if they have concerns or questions. And following up is really, really important.
One of the things that I heard at a different advocacy day that I participated in, that was so good. They had a staffer on, and the staffer said, I don't work on the members' campaign. I have nothing to do with their reelection.
Yeah.
And sometimes people come in and they'll say, oh, I voted for this member, or maybe they even go, I didn't really vote for you. You don't bring that up. Like that's
really important. So voting is a separate, you actually, when my former boss was running for reelection, we could not talk about her election campaign in her office.
Yeah.
I called it the office, the sidewalk office.
That's the same in the Capitol. The
Yeah.
US Capitol, they can't. And so don't even,
That's a great point.
need to bring up, oh, I voted for you or this or that.
Yeah.
And by May, you're starting to hear some campaign things. There might be primaries.
You could thank them for their work. That's a way that you could sort of, thank you. So Barb, thank you, Senator Kalora, for some of the great work that you've done in office. Thank you and your staff.
But
that's
great.
Yeah.
That's great. Don't need to bring up elections or voting or anything like that. Jesse, thank you. That was phenomenal. And what great tips and advice. So if you're not completely overwhelmed yet, don't worry.
Don't be overwhelmed. You have a state captain, and Barb's going to tell you all about these other resources too. So,
bottom line, you have two great resources. One will be your state captain, and the other will be this webpage, resolve.org/advocacy day. I go to that page and I see some content, and then I start scrolling down and I see more content, and I scroll down. I see, keep scrolling, because there's so much there. We have two other training webinars that as a new advocate, you absolutely positively need to listen to. One is very short. It's with Jesse's colleague, Sarah, and we talk about the exact issues and the specific asks. Just so you hear it, you're going to see it in a document, but you can hear about it. And then we have another video, another training webinar that's for everyone. And it's kind of like how to get yourself ready for a virtual advocacy day. Even if you've done it, log on. And we use a special online app and a tool for managing all your meetings. We use a third-party vendor. They're a company called Advocacy Associates. So we have somebody from that company on, and they walk through the tool. It's really awesome. So check out that webpage. And again, your state captains are going to be just a great resource for you.
This webinar was recorded in 2022. However, the content and information is relevant to Advocacy Day 2023. Any references to the date of Advocacy Day are for the 2022 date. Advocacy Day in 2023 is Tuesday, April 25th.